This morning, a moment of respect as wreaths are laid in Jerusalem.
It is indeed a solemn day, as you can see, and here on Merritt Street, we are also taking time to honor the lives lost during one of the largest genocidal events in history. Joe Gumm is back now with more.
And Joe, you discovered some unsettling statistics, really, and an increase in anti-Semitism, and a large segment of the society isn't even being taught about the Holocaust.
I sure did, and unfortunately, I stumbled across the main reason why we're seeing so much anti-Semitic hate growing on college campuses today. Take a look. A tragic consequence of Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel is that we've seen a sharp increase in acts of anti-Semitism or hatred of Jews worldwide. In 2023, the Anti-Defamation League reported 8,873 anti-Semitic cases of assault, harassment, and vandalism in the U.S., a statistic that terrifies Johnny Daniels, founder of From the Depths Foundation, an organization that helps recognize Holocaust memorials.
People are very scared right now, and it's a very difficult time to be a Jew, both in Israel, but especially internationally.
Part of the U.S. Department of State's definition of anti-Semitism includes the calling for the killing of Jews and those who accuse Jews of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust, something that has spread to all levels of education.
I would call it a metastatic cancer on America's college campuses. And now that metastatic cancer has sadly spread to high schools, middle schools, and even elementary schools.
A possible indication of why just 5 states had laws requiring Holocaust education before 2017, according to a report from Axios. An alarming number that lawmakers took notice of and attempted to change with the passing of the Never Again Education Act.
I am proud to be a co-sponsor of this bipartisan bill to give schools and teachers across the United States the resources needed to incorporate Holocaust education into their classrooms and teach our children the consequences of intolerance and hate.
There are still 30 states in the U.S. that don't require teaching of Holocaust materials, but with organizations such as the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, that might change.
The second half of the 19th century saw the emergence of yet another kind of anti-Semitism.
With Holocaust survivors dying each day, some fear the awareness of the event might die as well, leaving a generation or two uneducated about one of the greatest history lessons ever known. Well, that's what is being called now a metastatic cancer. Joining us now here on Morning on Merritt Street, Holocaust survivor Carm Waldman and her son Joel. They have a podcast called Surviving the Survivor and have now written a book with the same name, a history of sorts of how these atrocities have affected their lives. Carm and Joel, thank you for joining us here.
Thank you. Great to be here on this somber day. Appreciate it.
Yes, definitely a somber day. Carm, we'll start with you. Just seeing the video and hearing that and some of the stats now that are startling, what are some of the biggest lessons learned from surviving the Holocaust that you can share with our audience?
The lesson of the Holocaust, I was a child during the Holocaust, but my adult life, I tried to help people who were oppressed and I was a social worker, I have a master's in social work. And I tried to help people, and I was working against this ever repeating itself. And my wounds were healing very beautifully. I have 8 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, and my wounds were healing beautifully until this literally last onslaught of anti-Semitic outbursts. And I am still an optimist, and I still think that through words, of agreement, through negotiations, through communication, we can improve the situation. I have to tell you, I am not depressed, I am not scared, but I call to action to prevent this from happening again.
Yes, thank you, Carm. What a great example you are to those in our audience. Talk about some of the hardships, though, that experienced back then as a child, so eerily similar to what we're seeing across the U.S. right now, especially on college campuses.
I was 1 month short of 5-year-old when I was in the ghetto with my mother, father, grandfather, and grandmother. And Nazis came and they took all of the inhabitants of the ghetto to the freight station to put it into cattle cars to take to Auschwitz. This group, they took straight to Auschwitz, which was definitely a death camp. And my father and grandfather were gassed in their gas chambers and then incinerated in their ovens. But my mother had a very unreasonable strength of spirit at that moment. She grabbed me by my hand, and through a hole on the back fence, she ran out of the ghetto with me alone. I was probably the only one of the 5,000 people there who escaped with my mother. And then some righteous Gentiles helped us, and they placed me with nuns. And I was with nuns for about 6 months.
Well, thank God for a mother with courage. Joel, having a mom that's a Holocaust survivor, how do you feel about the overall climate of our nation today, seeing in that package that in 30 states alone, this is not being taught? You hear gas chambers, terms like the ghetto. Kids don't even know what that means now, right, Joel?
Yeah, it's really amazing how ignorant some of these young children are, and it's no fault of their own. It's a problem with the education system, and a bigger problem, obviously, is what we're seeing at these universities and some of the most elite universities in the entire world. It's important to note on this day, there are only 245,000 survivors left, and someone said that my mother is an endangered species, which is very true. However, at the same time, you just heard my mother. It's, you know, the slogan from the Holocaust is never again, but my mother never loses hope, always very optimistic. And this book that I've just written is actually filled with a ton of humor. It is not your typical, I say it's not your mother's Holocaust story, it's mine, and it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek title because my mom is my, biggest supporter, but also my harshest critic. So hence the term Surviving the Survivor. It's very Tuesdays with Maury-esque, the book is, and also has an endorsement from the famous author Mitch Albom.
Great author there, that's right, award-winning. And obviously this is an important time. Holocaust Remembered. Today we're joined by Carm and Joel. Carm, what does this day mean to you and as far as going in the future? And how do you see this conflict with Israel and Hamas, especially what we're seeing on college campuses? How do you see this playing out in the next few months, even a possibility the next year?
I think that there is no way out of improving communications, improving the education. When they say from the river to the sea, which is the slogan of these pro-Hamas groups, you ask them which river are you talking about and which sea, and people have no idea. People have no idea of the whole political context of the situation. And again, just like with the Holocaust, education is very important, because what happens then, the other people, the majority of Americans, turn on the Muslims. We saw that on some of the campuses, and it is not necessary to have constant conflict and confrontation when things can be resolved in other ways that are more peaceful.
I just want to jump in there too and just say thank you to Dr. Phil and Merritt Street. The media is also what will help prevent, in my opinion, as a former member of the broadcast media, another Holocaust story, shows like yours this morning, highlighting this and keeping pressure on, that is equally as important as the education is out there. So thanks to all of you as well.
And I want to stress that we are here today because of the memorizing the Holocaust, but we are not just focused on the Holocaust. We are focused on everybody's quality of life. And believe it or not, something even bigger, the meaning of life. So our book is a little bit even broader than just the Holocaust, which was a tremendous and gigantic tragedy. But this book, it goes after, because one of the tragedies of the Holocaust is that you have to continue to live. If you were a child Holocaust survivor and your father and grandfather and all your family were gassed, other than your mother, you have to live with this for the next 85 years. I'm going to be 85 in August.
Joel, your mom mentioned several times during that last answer about education and how important it is. As we saw in that piece, if Congress is doing their job, who's doing the job of teaching this in the states? Is it up to the states? How do we get this taught in our schools? Because if they're not learning it in elementary, in middle school, in high school, no wonder why we're seeing this on college campuses today, correct?
Yeah, 100%. You saw that lawmaker in the piece that you ran. Ultimately, you know, it's going to be the legislators in D.C. and on the state level that are going to make these decisions. But people always have the voice. This is why I'm dragging my mom out at 85. Sometimes she's kicking and screaming. But again, there are not a lot of survivors left. They have to have their voices heard. And you, the public, the people watching this, have to have their voices heard. We've got to read books, and not just about this. For my honeymoon, I went to Rwanda. There was a horrific genocide there. I love animals, wanted to see gorillas. I heard crazy stories about the genocide there. It's not just the Jewish people. I think that's important. We're really getting the brunt of it right now. They'll come after non-Jews, African Americans. They'll come after Muslims. What goes around comes around. So I think people need to stand up for each other and what's happening right now on these college campuses, especially the elite ones, and these presidents at places like Columbia University, at UCLA, who are standing by and did basically nothing. It's absolutely shameful.